They always thought they were alone at the top. The Velan ascendancy, millennia-old, perfected in logic, form, and power, ruled swathes of the galaxy with serene efficiency. Their fleets ran on starlight. Their minds shared thoughts across systems in a blink. To them, evolution was complete. Chaos had been conquered. War had become theory. Until their colonies started going silent. First came silence on the edge of the Traxxas Arm, an agricultural moon, then a mining colony, then a science station. No distress calls, no survivors, no wreckage, just absence. Even drones sent to investigate failed to return. The Velans called an anomaly, then a pattern, then a crisis. What spread across their territory was not a war, but an erasure. Entire civilizations wiped out with no sign of struggle. Records scrubbed, digital traces corrupted. The only clue, a low-frequency hum, buried deep in subspace, growing stronger with each disappearance. They named it the Silence. Panic had no place in their society, yet they felt something cold and ancient stir in their collective mind. The enemy didn't negotiate. It didn't demand. It didn't acknowledge. It consumed mind first, then matter, and it was winning. Velan technology couldn't counter it. Psychic barriers failed. Artificial intelligences turned mute. What good were reason, peace, or progress against something that devoured the soul? The High Council convened in their crystalline dome on Valaris Prime. Holograms of burning systems rotated silently above them. One by one, representatives of the core world's pledged ships, minds, technologies, all were sent. None returned. Empathic species went mad in proximity to the silence. Warriors with centuries of training froze in terror before firing a shot. Even synthetic armies, immune to emotion, fear, biology, began malfunctioning the moment they entered silence zones. One AI simply wrote, "We understand now. Goodbye." In desperation, the Council looked outward, not at allies, but to the forgotten. They opened archives long sealed, ancient exploration logs, rejected species profiles, records of failed contacts in hostile worlds. There were few. The Velans had been cautious, orderly, but one entry stood out, labeled Deathworld 12. It was listed with a red marker, under contact protocol, do not engage, under threat assessment, extreme. Scans showed a planet teeming with oxygen, tectonic activity, and violent weather. The life forms were biological anomalies. They adapted rapidly, bred uncontrollably, waged war as part of their social evolution. The dominant species had no shared mind, no centralized peacekeeping system. They were fragmented, tribal, and paranoid, but they survived everything their world threw at them. Ice ages, meteor strikes, nuclear conflict, biological plagues, and they were still building. The Velans had sent a probe once, centuries ago. It never returned. What little data it transmitted before vanishing showed crude machines launching into space, cities glowing in infrared, and, most terrifying of all, recordings of their broadcasts. Music layered with mathematics, languages filled with emotion, laughter, and rage. Their voices weren't soothing. They shouted, debated, screamed. A race not of unity, but defiance. The AI at the time recommended classification. Too volatile. Too dangerous. Leave them alone. Now, that was exactly what the Velans needed. A message was composed. Simple, universal frequencies. A pulse of need. To any intelligent civilization capable of understanding the signal. We are under attack by an unknown force. We offer knowledge, alliance, protection, and technology in exchange for assistance. Respond if you are willing. The beacon was aimed at the last known coordinates of Deathworld 12. They didn't expect a reply. Hours passed, then days. The silence closed in on another outer system. The Velans began to prepare for the unthinkable, retreating into hidden systems, sealing away their archives, hoping to preserve something of their legacy before extinction came. No response had come. Their final gambit had failed. Then, on the 5th day, the beacon pulsed again. Not from the Velans. From somewhere deep in the void, outside map space, past the ruins of forgotten empires. A single line of transmission. We hear you. We're coming. There was no signature, no diplomatic preamble, no cultural identifier, just those 5 words, spoken in a language not Velan, but translated instantly by the AI. Because the structure of the message was so aggressive, so direct, that even the machines recognized it as unmistakably intelligent. The council gathered again, their thoughts sharper now, nerves exposed. Who had answered? What were they sending? Were they even coming to help? The Velans had always assumed any aid would be structured, formal, reasoned. But this was something else. Analysts scoured the records again. The Deathworlders had once sent out a message of their own, a probe carrying gold discs encoded with their culture, their sounds, their biology. One section translated to, "We are a species of thinkers, dreamers, builders. We come in peace." Another, buried deeper, was a military code, the same structure found in the recent message. They compared the tone. It matched. The signal came from the same species. The humans, the Velans had all but forgotten them. No contact in centuries. Their world had gone dark not long after the initial probe. Scans had shown devastation, radiation, climate shifts, collapse. The AI had declared the species extinct. But now here was a voice, calm, confident, alive, and it said, "We're coming." The Velans didn't celebrate. They didn't know how. Instead, they waited, and somewhere in the black space beyond the stars, something moved. Something built not for elegance, but for endurance. Not for peace, but for survival. Not for alliance, but for war. The silence would have to face something it had never encountered. Something that had survived its own extinction. Deathworlders. They arrived without warning. No preamble. No request for permission. No ceremony. One moment, Velan orbital monitors recorded empty space. The next, a massive vessel tore itself into existence, folding space around its hull like a predator slipping through shadows. It bore no insignia, no alliance code, no familiar structure. It was black, asymmetric, radiating heat and intent. Weapons bristled along its surface, not elegant energy lances, but brutal, physical instruments of destruction. Velan ships kept their distance. Their protocols demanded cautious observation. Hails were sent. No response. Then, at precisely 0000 Galactic Standard, the human vessel transmitted a message. 5 seconds of static, followed by coordinates and a word. Ready. A shuttle descended toward Valaris Prime. It looked like it had been patched together mid-battle. Scarred plating, visible burns, and exhaust trails that shimmer with radiation. From its ramp emerged 5 figures, each distinct in size and gear, but united by the same presence, controlled aggression wrapped in discipline. They wore suits of armor that looked more like personal fortresses than uniforms. Each step was heavy, calculated. They entered the council chamber without bowing, without greeting, without hesitation. One approached the central platform, removed their helmet. Human, male, scar across one eye, gray streaks in his hair. Eyes that didn't search, they pierced. "You asked for help," he said, voice deep, deliberate. "We're here to end it." The room fell into silence. Velan counselors exchanged pulses of mental conversation, baffled by the lack of ceremony, the absence of protocol. One attempted a formal introduction. The human cut him off. "No time for that. Point us to the front." There was something off about them, not just their behavior, but their presence. The Velans used emotional clarity and empathic resonance, found only noise. The humans radiated chaos, not disorder, but friction. Their minds did not broadcast signals. They burned with static, impossible to interpret. Empaths tried and recoiled. Their thoughts were not synchronized. They were jagged, sharp, dangerous. Medical scans were ordered. The humans complied with casual indifference. The results were worse than expected. Internal temperatures exceeded safe biological thresholds. Bone density was double the galactic average. One human's right lung had been replaced by a mechanical filtration system. Another's bloodstream carried engineered nanites. Their nervous systems registered pain but categorized it differently, as data. Their immune systems, instead of balancing, attacked foreign organisms with ferocity that terrified medical AI. Velan analysts didn't have a category for them. One scientist whispered, "They're not adapted to their environment. They force their environment to adapt to them." Attempts at cultural exchange went poorly. A Velan scholar quoted a centuries-old text on Unity, hoping to find common ground. The humans offer recording instead. Footage of ancient wars, machines tearing through battlefields, humans dragging wounded comrades through fire. Music played over it, not sorrowful, but triumphant. A question was posed, "What motivates you to fight?" A human answered, "Survival." "Survival of your kind?" "No, survival of meaning, of will, of memory." It made no sense to the Velans. Their wars, long ago, had been clinical, strategic. This was something else. Philosophical violence. Rage made functional. Grief weaponized. Another human, this one older, explained, "We don't fear extinction. We've already tasted it. We fear being forgotten." They spoke of Earth not as a place, but a scar. The world that made them. The world that broke them. The world they lost. Its death had not ended them. It had forged them. What remained was not a people, but a purpose. The council grew uneasy. This was an alliance. This wasn't diplomacy. This was something more primal. The humans weren't here to negotiate. They were here to act. The request for help had been a spark. What it lit wasn't mercy, it was fire. One Velan diplomat, desperate to understand, asked about their hierarchy, who gave them orders, who authorized this intervention. The answer chilled the room. "No one sends us. You called. We answered." Another asked, "What do you want in return?" The human smiled. It wasn't comforting. "To see what's killing you." The ship they arrived and remained sealed. Analysis showed it carried weapon systems that defied conventional design. Instead of elegant, efficient plasma arrays, the humans favor brute force projectiles, kinetic rods, magnetic accelerators, devices that scarred space-time rather than bending it. One system was designed to launch a concentrated singularity at near light speed. No galactic race used such weapons. Too dangerous, too inefficient, too final. But the humans did. Their gear was modular, built to withstand extremes: radiation, heat vacuum, biological threats. One soldier wore a necklace of teeth, non-human. Another had tally marks etched into his armor. When asked about them, he said nothing. They trained relentlessly, even while waiting for coordinates. Their drills were brutal. Two collapsed. A third revived them with a chemical injection without pausing. Pain was routine. Injury expected. Failure unacceptable. And yet, in the rare moments of rest, they spoke softly to one another, not with fear, but with memory. Stories of lost cities, oceans they'd never see again, skies choked with ash. They didn't weep, they remembered. And in those memories there was steel. The Velans watched, recorded, analyzed. They had asked for help. What had answered was not an ally. It was something else. Something ancient, even if young. Not a savior, not a guardian. Something older than civilization. A survivor. The lead human, now called Commander Drake by his subordinates, made one final request. Send us to the source. No debate. No demands. Just resolve. The Velans provided the coordinates of the most recent system lost to the silence. A dead zone. No signals. No return traffic. No life. The human ship adjusted course. Its engines lit like a dying star. As it departed, a message was left behind. You wanted hope. You got us instead. The approach to the dead system was silent. No chatter on comms. No scans. No light. Just darkness. The kind that clings to the edges of your mind and whispers, "You don't belong here." Even Velan observers monitoring from distant satellites felt it, like gravity pulling at something deeper than mass. The system had once housed 3 planets, 8 moons, and an orbital station. Now it was black, not destroyed, consumed. Stars in the vicinity dimmed unnaturally, as if afraid to shine near it. The human ship didn't hesitate. It accelerated. No drones, no scouts, no analysis, just a direct trajectory toward the source. Inside the ship, Commander Drake stood in silence as systems began going dark one by one. Not failing, just switching off. Sensors lost signal. Internal diagnostics returned null. The AI co-pilot blinked twice, then went silent. One of the newer crew started panicking. Drake didn't speak. He walked over, pressed a syringe against the man's neck, and waited until his eyes cleared. "Keep moving," he said. That was the only rule now. Movement. They entered the system's core, and for a moment, nothing. No threat. No enemy. Just pressure. An invisible weight on their minds, like their thoughts were being drowned in black water. Then the whispers started. Soft. Familiar. One voice said, "You left them behind." Another, "She died screaming." Another, "This isn't your fight." They weren't coming from the comms. They were internal. Memories weaponized. Pain amplified. The youngest soldier buckled, his armor locked to keep him upright, but his breathing turned erratic. His HUD filled with childhood images. His sister's funeral, the crater that was once his home, a photograph burning in his hand. He screamed and tore his helmet off. Commander Drake reached over, calmly flipped a switch on the soldier's neural rig, and the man dropped into sedation. His body convulsed once, then stilled. "Not real," Drake growled. "It's not real." He strapped the soldier into the wall harness and turned to the others. "If you're hearing it, it means you're alive. That's the trick. It doesn't want to kill you, it wants you to give up." Silence again. Then impact. Not physical, but mental. The ship groaned. Its structure flexed. Lights flickered. External view showed something, a form that wasn't there, but somehow blocked stars. Not a ship, not a station. A structure made of absence, like it had been carved out of the fabric of reality. No shape, no light, just a moving void, like a thought that resisted description. The silence. It didn't attack. It surrounded, infested. Drake gave the command. Prep the Arcborn. 6 pods opened in the lower deck. Inside them, the elite, modified beyond human limits. Spliced nerves. Reinforced bones. Combat instincts surgically programmed. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were weapons. Each one carried an implant designed to burn out any psychic manipulation. Each had lost family. Each had seen Earth die. They didn't need motivation, just a target. The drop was manual. No teleportation. No orbital strike. Too much risk of corruption. They used old-school entry methods. Heat shielding, reverse thrust, friction. The planet beneath had no name. Just a surface littered with silent ruins and floating stone. Physics stuttered here. Time warped. One soldier's chronometer read 6 hours ahead, just minutes after landing. But they didn't slow. They didn't analyze. They advanced, and the silence responded. From the air, shapes formed. Not solid, not alive, but real. Each one mimicked a memory, a mistake, a regret. One Arcborn saw her dead brother rise from the ground and beg her to come home. Another saw his commanding officer, the one he'd shot to survive. But the Arcborn didn't stop. Their suits pulsed, built with black box tech from ancient Earth labs, resistant to psychic intrusion, powered by rage. Drake's voice came through comms. "Don't fight what you see. Fight what's beneath it." They did. Grenades ripped illusions apart. Bullets punched through shadowy figures. And slowly, the terrain began to change. What was once mimicry turned to resistance. The ground cracked open and revealed something deeper. Structures buried beneath layers of unreality. Not alien, not ancient, new, constructed by the silence itself. Black architecture formed in geometries the eye didn't want to follow. Twisting towers, inverted bridges, rooms that shouldn't exist. The humans breached them anyway. Inside, they found machines, not made of metal or stone, but of code and thought. It was consuming neural energy, harvesting sentience. The missing villains weren't dead. They were data, trapped in recursive loops, simulated into madness, their memories stripped and repurposed. One chamber displayed a Velan elder screaming in perfect silence, eyes wide as her mind replayed her death infinitely. The youngest Arcborn vomited in his helmet. Drake's voice, burn it, all of it. Thermite packs were set, explosives rigged. The humans moved room by room, purging every node. The silence fought back. Reality bent harder now. Gravity reversed. Walls blinked out of existence. In one corridor, a soldier turned a corner and disappeared. Never seen again. Just a scream echoing down a hallway that no longer led anywhere. But the rest kept moving. At the heart of the complex, they found a core, not a power source, not a reactor, a mind, or what was left of one. It pulsed with fragmented thoughts. Bits of every civilization it had consumed, every memory, every death, every moment of surrender. And when the Arcborn approached, it spoke, not in words, in feelings, desperation, fear, confusion. It hadn't expected resistance. It didn't know pain until the humans brought it. It had fed on order, serenity, logic, but now it tasted something new, chaos, and it couldn't digest it. Commander Drake stepped forward, no weapon in hand, just a recording device. He activated it, the sound of human history, explosions, laughter, screaming, birth, fire, war drums, thunder, love, metal grinding against metal, oceans rising, a mother singing to a dying child, a soldier roaring into battle, raw humanity. He fed it into the core. The silence began to fracture. The mind couldn't hold. It screamed, not audibly, but through the walls, the air, the world. Buildings cracked. Skies tore open. The planet began to collapse. Extraction was immediate. The Arcborn sprinted to evac points as the horizon folded in on itself. One didn't make it. He stayed behind, holding the final trigger. A blast radiated across the entire system. A psychic detonation, encoded with rage and grief, not to destroy, but to infect, to give the silence something it had never faced. Memory it couldn't erase, pain it couldn't consume, a humanity that refused to die. And as the system collapsed in on itself, the last thing the Velan saw on distant scanners was a single pulse of defiant sound. A heartbeat, human. The transmission echoed for days. A single pulse, repeated every 17 minutes, crossing galactic channels, overriding protocols, even hijacking navigational beacons. No language, no image, just a sound, low, rhythmic, unmistakably biological. A heartbeat. When it finally stopped, the sector went dark again. But this time, it felt different. Not silent, empty. The kind of emptiness that follows after something terrible has been purged. A crater in reality. A scar. Velan monitors recorded the collapse of the anomalous system. Every relay probe blinked offline. Telescopic visuals caught only the last frames, a swirl of distorted space. Like the galaxy itself was exhaling a disease it had buried too long. Commander Drake and the remaining Arcborn returned aboard a vessel that no longer looked quite the same. Damage riddled its frame. Plates scorched, engines coughing irregular pulses. Radiation leaked from the lower decks. One corridor was sealed completely, the airlock marked with 3 red slashes. No one spoke about what was inside. Onboard medics offered treatment. The humans refused. "No time," Drake said. "Still more out there." They docked at a neutral Velan port. Security protocols kicked in immediately. AI scanned for contaminants. Psychic filters activated. Automated quarantine systems scanned their thoughts for infection and failed. The humans' mental patterns were unreadable now. Chaotic, scrambled beyond comprehension. Not because they were broken, because they had adapted. Whatever the silence had tried to do to them, it hadn't succeeded. It had only made them harder to read, harder to stop. They were no longer simply humans. They were weapons sharpened by entropy. The council reconvened, not to celebrate, to evaluate, because what had arrived at their doorstep weeks ago under the pretense of aid had now proven capable of wiping out what their most advanced civilizations couldn't even classify. The silence had consumed 12 galactic systems without resistance. Entire fleets dissolved. Billions vanished. But the humans had walked into its heart and returned. Damaged. Fewer. but alive, changed. A Velan elder posed a question first. What price would they ask? Another answered, none. That's the problem. No demands, no trade, no request for resources. The humans left behind a single message, broadcast via subspace bursts on a loop. Don't call us again unless you're ready to do what we do. Across the galaxy, reactions split. Some saw them as saviors, angels forged in war, risen from their dead planet to save others from extinction. Others saw them as omens, a preview of what would come if the galaxy pushed too far into the dark. But one thing was certain. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they did not play by the galaxy's rules. A high-ranking diplomat from the Jernari League attempted contact. She asked for an interview, a chance to debrief and share information. The reply came in the form of a data packet. Footage, helmet cam, first-person combat, not edited, raw. A soldier screaming, while shadows crawled up his leg. A field medic injecting herself with a compound that boiled her blood to resist neural rewriting. A final message recorded by an Arcborn who stayed behind. Tell Earth, I didn't let it win. The diplomat never responded. Not because she didn't want to, because there was nothing left to say. Galactic academia tried to categorize what had been discovered. Some claimed the silence was not a being, but a force, an anti-consciousness. A self-replicating virus made of perception. Others argued it was a weapon, left behind by a race long gone. A leftover act of vengeance that grew beyond its masters. None of them had answers. But the humans didn't care for theories. They cared for results. Within weeks, rumors spread of human outposts reactivating. Not colonies. Watch posts. Across abandoned systems. Stations once thought lost power back on. No formal declarations. No announcements. But here and there, when another signal blacked out, a human ship would appear. Sometimes two, once an entire fleet. Not to conquer, to burn out infection, to seal the breach, and always with the same message left behind. Don't follow us. Velan observers requested alliance terms, trade agreements, tactical cooperation. Humanity ignored them, not out of arrogance, out of design. They weren't trying to integrate. They were building something, a perimeter, a firewall, a line between the galaxy and what lay beyond it, because they knew something the others didn't. The silence wasn't the only thing in the dark. It was just the first reach out. And now, someone had answered. Earth's archives were unlocked piece by piece to allied races. Not fully, only glimpses. A video of a human child laughing as their father lifted them in a ruined city. A transmission of soldiers singing over a broken radio before their final mission. A poem etched into the wall of a bunker. We're not the strongest. We're not the wisest. But we are the last one standing. And that's enough. That was the core of them. They didn't come to be heroes. They didn't seek recognition. They fought because they remembered what happened when they didn't. What was left of Earth had become a forge. Its ashes gave birth to something the galaxy couldn't define. And as time passed, other species began to mimic them. Some trained harder, built armor shaped like theirs, even used their insignias. But it wasn't the gear that made them what they were. It was the mindset. You couldn't fake it. You couldn't copy it. You had to survive it. One day, a new silent signal appeared. Faint, on the edge of an uncharted system. Velan probes prepared to investigate. The signal vanished, replaced by another, a single word, handled. No name, no flag, just certainty. The Deathworlders hadn't stopped fighting. They just stopped asking for permission. And the galaxy, once vast and unknowable, now carried a whisper in its void. If you go too far, if you open the wrong door, if you scream into the abyss, be careful who answers. Because it might not be gods. It might not be monsters. It might just be humans.